If you walk away from conversations feeling empty, like you just gave your attention, energy, and curiosity to someone who offered nothing back, you're not being dramatic. You're experiencing what I call conversational selfie culture. And that's why thoughtful people are going quiet everywhere. Welcome to Rage Against the Audacity. This is your space where that deep exhaustion that doesn't seem to go away finally makes sense. Today, we're talking about why discourse has become performance, what conversational selfie culture is, and what happens when people realize they are the only ones that are actually trying to connect. Let me explain what's happening. Now, before we get into what's broken, we need to level set on what communication actually is. Because I think a lot of people, like myself, have genuinely forgotten because it seems to be so rare nowadays. Most people think communication is just talking, flapping their gums, jaw jacking, as we used to call it back in the day, delivering your opinion, sharing your news, broadcasting your thoughts, telling everybody your business. That's not communication. That's a monologue with a captive audience. Real communication is an actual exchange. The key word here is exchange. Information flowing both ways, ideas bouncing back and forth. There's one person who is sharing, the other responds, but not with just their own statement, with actual engagement. Questions, curiosity, and building on what was said. The purpose isn't just to deliver your message or your opinion. It's to understand each other, to connect, to create dialogue where both people are seen and heard. But here's what's happening now. People are treating every conversation like it's a TED Talk or like it's a social media post waiting for likes, a performance optimized for attention extraction. They deliver their ideas and their opinions for the sole purpose of someone else receiving them. There's no curiosity about perspective, there's no questions, and there's no tell me more about that. And if you try to engage, if you ask questions, explore their thought process, try to understand how they drew their conclusions, well, that gets perceived as a challenge, and their walls go up, much like the shields on the Enterprise. And then the conversation gets shut down. Welcome to conversational selfie culture, where every interaction is optimized for someone to be the main character, but there's no actual connection happening. Let me tell you what I mean here. You mentioned that you went to Tennessee last week. And instead of, oh, really? Why'd you go? How was it? Who'd you see? How was the food? What you get is, I went to Wyoming last week. Full stop. Immediate redirect. Zero curiosity about your experience. Or here's another one for you. You're excited about something small. Maybe you bought yourself a notebook or something. My stationery freaks will understand this. And that notebook has the paper that you really like. Or let's say you found a coffee shop with the perfect atmosphere. Or you finally figured out how to fix that thing that's been broken for months. You know, these are small things. They can bring some people joy. You share it. And instead of, oh, what kind? How'd you figure it out? Or literally any question that acknowledges what you said, the conversation immediately becomes about their notebooks, their coffee preferences, or their broken thing. Are you picking up what I'm putting down here? There's no space for your experience to exist for even 30 fucking seconds. And here's the thing. I don't think these people are trying to be rude. They probably think they're relating in some way. But what's actually happening is you tried to share something and it instantly became about them. No exchange, no curiosity, no reciprocity. So you do what you've learned to do. You go quiet. You let them talk. You let them blather. And then you find an exit any way you can. Because, what's the point? If every attempt to share gets redirected back to them, then why bother? Why waste the energy? This isn't conversation. This is competing for attention. And you can feel that difference in your body. I don't know about you, but I notice when I walk away from a real conversation, I feel energized. I feel kind of like there's a little pep in my step. I feel connected. I feel like I just had a good meal that satisfies me. You may recognize this in some respects, like if you're in a conversation with someone and you start to tear up. That has happened to me on a lot of occasions. When I'm having a real meaningful conversation with someone and we're both able to share and enjoy each other's company and learn something, I do find myself tearing up. Have you had that experience? But when you walk away from a conversation in this whole world of conversational selfie culture, you feel empty, depleted, like you just performed a service nobody asked for and nobody appreciated. Because, essentially that's what it is. It's a performance where you are the audience. And if you're someone who actually knows how to have a conversation, asks questions, listens for understanding, builds on what people say, now you're stuck doing all the heavy lifting. You're the one showing curiosity, trying to create an actual connection while they just take. Take your attention, take your energy, take your time, and offer nothing back. Now let's look at this by zooming out a bit, because this is happening on a larger scale. We've created a culture where attention is currency, where telling your story provides a dopamine hit, but hearing someone else's provides nothing. Social media has trained us for this. Every post is a broadcast. Every story is a performance. Every interaction is optimized for maximum engagement. The algorithm rewards main character energy, and it punishes listening. And that behavior has leaked into real life. People approach every conversation like it's a post waiting for likes. They deliver their content, expect engagement, and move on to the next audience. Any attempt to actually engage, though, explore deeper, to understand their reasoning, gets treated like criticism, like you're challenging them instead of trying to connect with them. Here's what's happening as a result. People who are thoughtful, who are emotionally intelligent, who know how to create actual connection, they're withdrawing. They're going quiet. They've stopped sharing, and they're finding the exits. And you know what's wild? The performers don't even notice. They don't notice that the conversation has become one-sided. They don't notice that you stopped sharing. They don't notice that the light has gone out in your eyes. There are many ways to look at this, but I'm going to say it's because they weren't interested in you to begin with. They were really only interested in themselves. And from what I'm seeing, you were just the backdrop for their selfie. This is how we end up with emotionally intelligent people withdrawing into isolation because engaging feels like unpaid labor, because it's exhausting being everyone else's audience. And here's what happens when this pattern continues. People try boundaries, right? They'll say, "Can you ask questions or show some interest in what I have going on?" They may say, "I need us to have some back and forth in this relationship." Or they'll say things like, "I need you to show curiosity about me and my life and not just talk about yours." But boundaries only work when the other person has a capacity to recognize that there's a problem. And in conversational selfie culture, yeah, they can't see it. Because from their perspective, everything is fine. They're talking, you're listening. The conversation is happening. So what's the problem? So boundaries don't necessarily work. Communication doesn't seem to really work either. And trying harder doesn't seem to work. Eventually, people snap. They go silent. They disappear. They cut contact. Not gradually, not with warning. They just ghost. And that can be considered part of the larger extinction burst that we're experiencing, which is exactly what we're going to be diving into in the next episode. What happens when people finally realize that they're the only ones doing the work? What happens when the rewarding of toxic behavior stops? What happens when accommodating this conversational selfie culture stops? When the person who's carrying the entire relationship just walks away. So, if you're exhausted, if you're tired of being everyone's audience, if you're recognizing these patterns and feeling how hollow and empty conversations have become, you're not imagining it. This is real. And unfortunately, it's not getting any better. You have permission to stop trying so hard. You have permission to let conversations die when there's no reciprocity. You have permission to save your energy for people who actually want to exchange, not just broadcast. Because your attention is valuable. Your curiosity and your intelligence, those are gifts. Your questions, your engagement, and your genuine interest in other people, that's pretty fucking rare. And you don't owe it to people who don't give it back to you. For people who are tired of being everyone's emotional janitor, this is Rage Against the Audacity. If you're seeing conversational selfie culture everywhere too, drop a comment. What's your version of the Tennessee, Wyoming story? And if you have experiences you want to share, email us at show@rageagainsttheaudacity.com. Next episode, Extinction Burst. We're going to be talking about what happens when the people accommodating all this toxic behavior finally decide to stop and say enough. Until then, remember, you have permission to expect reciprocity in your relationships. See you in a couple of weeks.